So we're going to be learning about the screen printing process, which is one of the major printing processes that we'll be studying in this class. Screen printing is the most versatile process, meaning that you can print on any substrate. In this particular project, we are learning how to print on garments, in this case, a t-shirt. So you've gone through the design phase and you've assembled a t-shirt mock-up file to kind of give the viewer an idea of what they're going to get. So now we're going to kind of show you what takes place after the design is ready. So this is our lab in on the main campus in Kinston at Lenoir Community College, and just some of the equipment we'll talk about and use throughout this process. The first step is to prepare the screen so that we can attach a stencil, and we go through a washout or a cleaning process where we're using some, basically it's a kind of a detergent where we spray onto the screen. And that kind of not only roughs up the surface, but also cleans the screen of any kind of grease that may have gotten on there or oils from your hands. But the screen is typically a polyester material that is stretched across a metal or wooden frame. We have metal retensionable frames. So we spray this, in this case, we're calling it Magic Mesh Prep. And that we scrub both sides of it, and we just hose it out with our garden hose here in our washout booth. The washout booth is where we'll not only clean like we're doing now, but for reclaiming, for development, as you'll see as we move further on. So that's the first step, get the screen washed and ready to go. The second step is where we're going to adhere the capillary film. And in this case, we're going to position it emulsion down. We're using a project called the Ulano EZ50. It's a material that's got two sides, a darker side and a light side. The darker side is the emulsion side, and we're going to position that emulsion side down. Normally, you would want to do this in a kind of subdued light setting because this stuff is light sensitive, but it adheres to the fabric of the screen through a capillary process. So the screen is wet. We add this gelatin-like film, again called capillary film, that sticks to the screen and kind of absorbs into the screen fabric. And then we kind of lightly squeegee this, and we're going to place it into our drying cabinet. So if the drying cabinet is on, it will take probably 20 to 30 minutes. It's a light tight, you can dry this anywhere. It could be in a light tight closet, but this has forced air, heated air going through it, and it will kind of dry the screen much faster. And again, there's other kinds of processes, other kinds of emulsions that you can use. There's what we call a direct emulsion, which requires you to coat the screen. But we like the capillary film. It's pretty easy to use and pretty clean overall. Once the screen is dry, we move on to the exposure phase, and you've got to have some kind of exposure unit. I've peeled off kind of the base film, and I'm ready to put that into our exposure unit. Again, it would be best if you were doing this in subdued light, meaning not bright white light like I'm doing now, because this material is light sensitive. So this is our exposure unit. It's a giant vacuum frame with a bladder in it that will wrap around the screen frame so we get good contact. Once we create our design on the computer like you've already done, we output it onto a translucent type film called a vellum so that light can pass through that. And we'll take and put this, what we call emulsion down, or wrong reading in this case, position it kind of where the screen, where the image is going to print on the shirt, which is going to be kind of a chest design. You would have determined that on your, when you created your mock-up file. But we lower the frame, the contact frame, and lock it, and we turn on the vacuum. That sucks all the air out and allows us to get real good contact between what we call our positive, that translucent film material, translucent paper, and so it comes in good contact with our capillary film, because we don't want any air or any gaps in there because it can distort the image. Pretty much what happens is the black area or the image area of the design will block the light, and the areas of that film that get hit by the light will become, it's a photochemical reaction that would cause that film to become hardened. So we've done exposure tests and different things to get to this point. We're turning on our exposure system that will expose for 120 units. I'm not going to sit there and wait for all that, but once it gets exposed, we move on to film development. So after this positive was exposed, we take our frame that has the exposed area on it to our washout booth, and we're going to develop this stencil, which we're going to use 90-degree tepid water, which is kind of a lukewarm water. We're going to spray both sides, and all of these steps are listed out on the capillary film sheet posted inside of Moodle that you will see in the class. But kind of wet both sides, let it sit for 20 or 30 seconds, and then we begin our washout process. And I've kind of sped up this a little bit so you can kind of see, so you don't have to sit through the whole thing. But we sit there and just spray it with on the what we call the print side, because we don't want to knock that film off of there. We're printing on the side where the film was attached, so that's called the print side. The other side is called the squeegee side. But we continue to develop, and what happens is the area that was blocked by the light, or the black areas or image areas of that vellum, will wash away. And so that's kind of what you're seeing here, where the emulsion is washing away, thus creating some openings for the ink to pass through. Once we get all this completely washed out or developed, we're going to move on to the next phase, and this is pretty good. We've been having some, you can have some issues with adjusting your exposure, things like that, in order to get better results. But at this point, we're just going to place it in front of a fan so it can dry. We could blot it dry, but then we're going to load this onto the press once the frame is dried. So I'm going to kind of again speed up through some of this. So we attach the frame to our screen printing press, which this is a 6-color, 6-station machine. We're just using it as a 1-color machine. And we've got to then mask out the areas that we don't want ink to pass through onto the shirts, that we are non-image areas. So we're just using some 2-inch wide masking tape, and we're going completely around the frame to block out all of that. We're getting ready to print, so I'm using what we call a square edge squeegee for the application that we're using. We'll add the ink onto the press and onto the screen, and then we're going to take the squeegee. You can see kind of the consistency of the ink. It's a little bit gooey. We're going to position some material underneath onto the press. So I've just got a practice shirt here. And we're just going to smooth it out. And again, I'm kind of paraphrasing and running through some of this. We would print on paper prior to doing this to make sure everything was going to print correctly, but hold it at about 45 degrees, pull that across, and I'm doing a couple of pulls just because that white ink, we want it to be nice and opaque. I don't quite have enough spray adhesive on there. That's why it kind of peeled up a little bit, but you kind of get the gist of it. You can kind of see what's happening there. Once the shirt is printed, and we would keep on repeating that, but we were going to run the shirt through a dryer, which gets up to about 650 degrees. That cures that ink. The ink that we're using is a Plastisol ink that requires heat to be cured. This ink will not dry unless it is exposed to heat. And so that goes through a 650 degree dryer. And once that cures, it will be pretty much permanently attached to that shirt. It's real important to make sure you dry that thoroughly. Once you're done printing, and I'm going to act like I've got ink on my screen, we would remove all the ink, we'd remove the masking tape, and then we would use some solvent and some rags. It's just some elbow grease here to remove all of the ink, but I'm going to act like I've got ink on there, and I've got the solvent-based material here in that bottle where I would clean that screen and get all the ink off of that just using some rags and solvent. Once I do that, I'm ready to move to the reclaiming process, which basically says, hey, I want to reuse this screen. So I've got some emulsion remover. I am wearing eye protection. We're going to spray that emulsion area and it will kind of soften that. There's a little chemical reaction here where this stuff will kind of soften that emulsion. I'll kind of spray both sides. of this, and that will kind of soften that so that we can move to our next phase, which is basically just to kind of pressure wash. So I've got a little electric pressure washer, and I'm going to blast from the squeegee side. I'm going to take the pressure washer and I'm going to hold it about an inch or two away from that surface. And you can see that it just blasts that old emulsion right out of that screen. And then once we get through that, and I'm going to again kind of speed up here so that you don't have to sit here and watch all this. Once we go and pressure wash that completely, we could hit it with the washout, or excuse me, the screen prep, and start all over. And so it just depends on, you know, your particular operation, but that's kind of how we do it. There are tanks and things like that to clean out, but that's pretty much it. So once we get all of that, we could store that screen for future use and would be able to use it for future projects. The more you use those screens, the better they get. But again, just want to try to provide a quick overview of the screen printing process so you can see what happens to your project once it leaves the design phase.